Shalom, shalom, Yashara, shalom, shalom, Mashpaka. Hope everybody's having a good sixth day as we are starting to get ready and enter in the Shabbat. Hope everybody's having a good prep day today as we finish up our work. So praise Yahuwah for all that He's done for us this week, giving us a sound mind to keep us still, meditated on Him. I know we've all felt a lot of things going on as far as just being still and leaning on Him. For the word says in the last days that there should be a famine of the word, and we're starting to feel that, and we wrestle with it because we want to keep preaching and teaching and reaching, but Yahuwah, it's slowly letting us know, hinting to us that we're coming to the time where it's time to seal up the book, and more or less just live it out, be meekable, peaceable. It starts to get internalized where you are the living menorah. You are the Ruach HaKodesh. You are Yahusha in you. And because preaching and teaching is for a time. But it's for the production of being, Yahusha manifested on the earth. Even Hanuk says, in the beginning of his writings, that one of the Malakim that taught writings to him, he said, but even this is a curse unto me, for man was not designed to give testimony by paper and ink, but by just living it, by the breathing the word of his mouth, and him expressing it. But it was necessary that we put pen to ink to paper, for the sake of giving people testimony of what Yahusha is like, what He's all about, and so that we might have an understanding and catch that wave of frequency on our own. Because I've been running into a lot of people, Gentiles, atheists, you name it, on the streets wherever I go, and they have the Ruach. It says in the last days that the Ruach shall breathe on all flesh. Is that not right? Yoel says in that day that He shall pour out His Ruach on just Yerushalayim, on Yasharao, on the believers. No, it says on all flesh. And what I find is even these believers are picking up on the truth, and that's why you see them. Sometimes we think that, they look like, and they're in shock, like they don't know what's going on, they're losing their minds. Really, they're meditating on the word of Yah without even the pages, without paper and ink. Yahuwah is speaking to their mind. And because, praise Yah, if you have that love and compassion and go deep with them, they'll manifest and open up to you, and it'll be like Yahusha speaking through them, and they don't even know where they're getting it from. They'll tell me, I don't even know how I know these things, but I understand that this is this way and that is that. And I'll give you an example. I was talking to a sister, or not. I won't call her sister, like she's still learning, but the Ruach, she's telling me what the Ruach is speaking to her, and it's still true. And you meet in the middle with these people. We give them, just like Kafar was sent to the centurion. You have to remember the centurion didn't know the scriptures fully. He just knew, he didn't know Yahusha like that. He just knew that the Yahudim, he believed in Yahuwah in the way that the Yahudim believed, and kind of trusted that concept, and Baruch their people, and was a giver. He gave alms constantly and did a lot of kind deeds, because that's what the Malak tells us when he meets the centurion. He tells him that, your kind deeds and what you've done for the people and all your prayers have been received as a fragrant aroma before Yahuwah. It's come up to him. He's taken notice of it. And so we're going to send you kafah to manifest the whole truth, to show you who that really is. And it's Yahusha, the revelation of who died for your sins, who we put our trust in, so that we're more empowered in the Ruach to walk and live and be as He is in us. Hallelujah. Praise you, King Yahusha. And so a lot of people are like that centurion. A lot of rich people, right? Centurion was rich. He was in the military. I'm reading a lot of rich, military, wealthy people that may not completely understand or have, not that they don't agree with Yahusha, but just haven't had it expounded. It just hasn't been the right time. But they're being moved by the Ruach, almsgiving, doing kind deeds. They're getting full of love, but it's giving them revelation. Because I was speaking with some people, even just from the street, and this lady I met, she was even telling me, the problem I have with Christians is they think they'll get to know Yahusha through the book. But if they just actually get their head out of the book for a while and live life and talk to people, and live an experience, they'll find Yahushas in everything and in all of us. And she couldn't be more correct, because even in that moment, Yahusha was speaking to me through her. Because I understand, just like Hanuk said, man is not designed to give his account, his testimony through paper and ink. In other words, through books, like just reading them, writing them, but by living it, by being the love. The whole thing of that is supposed to be, even the good news, the basura, a trainer that shall cause us to manifest the love it's trying to tell us to be. Not just the hearers or the writers are declared right, but the doers, right? I'm putting writers in there because everybody wants to write a thing now on Facebook and post and share. And it's good. We edify the body, we edify one another, or we even admonish each other. But unto the good works, unto living it. The whole point is, if we make that our bread and butter, that can be idolatry in a way where we just worship a good word, wanting to share good teaching, wanting to share a good knowledge, like something that's hidden, a hidden mystery, but we're not living it, because Yahuwah wanted us to live that love, live that chai, to go out and be that chai. Who is my neighbor? Said the man who asked Yahusha in the Good Samaritan, and he said there was a man, Gentile, Yehudi, we don't know, coming from Yadakul, we don't know. And that's from a Gentile nation. And the Samaritans saw him and took care of him. He was declared as a Yasharim, as the light, as a child, as a bond of Yahuwah before the Pharisees and all the other people that walked by him that declared being the truth. In other words, if we're walking by our fellow men, people that were made in the image of Yahuwah, Yahusha, regardless of their beliefs, and disregard them because we don't consider them one of us, we're wicked. We're wicked. Because the true child, Ban, Sion, people of Yahuwah, are ones that have love towards all their fellow men when they see them in need, have compassion and favor, and are there to serve everybody. Yahusha came to serve. He will clear all that up when he comes back. But we're to be that love. We're to keep the Torah commandments and internalize that and do it ourselves. Walk out your own salvation with fear and trembling. People, if they want to know, they'll ask you about it. They'll be moved by the Ruach. Because true or not true, I can tell only about me, but a lot of people that hear, 99% of us, none of us came to the truth being beat over the head with somebody forcing us into it. Am I right? Tell me that someone was beating you the head over with it constantly, and you finally gave in and said, "Uncle, he beat you into submission." And all right, fine, I'll keep it. Just please stop beating me up. I'll keep the Sabbath. No, that's not how you came in. You were led by the Ruach to search these things out, to investigate it. You were led. You had a desire. You felt like there was something missing from your chai that you did not fully understand and grasp. Led you to search the scriptures. Led you to search the internet, to question things. You might have heard a few things or two, a message about the law was not done away with, things like that. But no one beat you over the head. It was just an advertisement. But you picked up on that. There's advertisements everywhere. And wherever our mind is, our heart, so our treasure is. Your treasure wasn't to seek that, to seek the truth of Yahuwah, the knowledge, the way, the truth, and the chai. What is that really? The Torah, Psalms 119, made flesh. But you sought that out for yourselves. We get full of the fire. We want to go preach that around. Cool, get out your system. But no, that's not how you're going to win people to the kingdom. It's through living it, through being love, being expression. You can be a billboard, praise Yah. But most people will respond to love, meekness, kindness, having a casual conversation. And so, just living it. When I finally burnt out, I tried preaching to people a lot of my life, and, that I don't want to hear it, I'm good, no, that, whatever, don't judge me. And the minute I just kind of stopped and mellowed out, people ask me, "So what do you believe?" And like how ironic twist. The minute I finally decided I'm gonna give up preaching and just kind of chill out and just worry about my own salvation, everybody started coming. It gravitated people to want to know, what do I believe? Who am I? What do I believe? That sort of that sort of thing. And so praise Yah, I was able to share that. And now I found a way to share that in a way that the world can receive it through that experience. Because the minute we try to think we got the word, people need to listen to us, forget what they think, they don't know better, I have what they need, you know, we need to humble ourselves. We become proud, because those people might have a bit of truth. Yahuwah works in mysterious ways. Those common people that you think are lost in the world, you don't know what they got in them. They might have a bit of truth, because the Ruach, a measurement of belief, amunaz, in everybody, they know something. And a lot of times they got what you need to hear. And so I learned to humble myself first, even though I think I know all. I run into people, how are you? And I'll sort of be in a subjective, submissive manner, sort of letting them speak, see what I can learn from them. And then they tend to manifest. All of a sudden, YAHUSHA manifests and tells me things that are too personal for anybody to know. They're speaking about their own life. It's exactly my life, exactly my mind, exactly little things that I've been wanting to know about, to get answered. They'll speak to me about personal matters. And then I'm like, wow, that's YAHUSHA. I'm glad I stayed quiet and just listened. I'm glad I was able to shut up and just listen and let them speak and hear what they have to say, because that's what love does. And it's only through that I don't even have to be like, okay, my turn, let me share something. They ask you, so what do you believe? They'll ask me, and so I'm able to share, and then they're able to receive it at that point. They're able to be like, yeah, man, that sounds right. I'm gonna look into that. But through that experience, I was able to come up with a pitch. That's what I came up with. Able to friendly, just be like, hey, how you doing? Hey, do you know YAHUSHA? Have you heard of YAHUSHA? Speak in the way they speak. Be compassionate, gentle in the way they can receive it. And they'll listen to the whole spiel after that. Did you know there's no J letter? Anthony, they don't put that. So we don't call him JC. And like, who's YAHUSHA? Well, you probably know him by JC. Jesus, JC. I don't like saying that name because it actually comes from Zeus too. Everything back then was called by Zeus. Ephesus, Tarsus, Pegasus. Pegasus means horse of Zeus, and you got Jesus. It means like praise Zeus, like hail Zeus, hey Zeus, right? So I'm like saying it, but yeah, there's no J letter. But YAHUSHA is, how we know him now, is more accurately defines who he really was, what he was more about. And he said, don't think that I came to destroy the law and the prophets. In Matthew 5:17, don't even think that I came to destroy the law and the prophets. I didn't come to destroy them. I came to fulfill them. In the Hebrew, that means to fully fill it up, to raise the standard, not to do away with it. He says that very thing in context right after that. For it is written, don't commit adultery. But I say to you, if you even look at a woman lustfully, you already committed that in your heart. Now, is that doing away? Or is that raising the standard? Raising the standard, right? And then he says after that, it is written, don't commit murder. But I say, if you have hate towards anyone in your heart, you've already murdered them. That's raising the standard. So if those commandments have been raised and internalized, how much more the mechanical, outward, physical ones that actually express his prophecies, who he really is and what he's about, like keeping the Sabbath day, right? On Saturday, 7th day, eating clean, no pork, none of that, right? And we're supposed to be keeping the biblical feasts, not Christmas and Easter. Those are pagan holidays. It says in Deuteronomy 12:30, don't do the way the nations do to their gods and do it to me. It's an abomination. Everything, a lot of these things that the world does that we consider to him are abominations. There's a reason for that, because Satan's mocking. See what I'm saying? And so we're supposed to do the biblical commandments. Keep the Sabbath on Saturday. They thought they could change the Sunday to mock them. Change his biblical feasts to Christmas and Easter to mock them. We should still keep those feasts. He should still eat clean. But we should do it in the right ruach, in the right nature, the way he is, the right love, the right attitude, the way he was. Because even the Pharisees were keeping the commandments, the Sabbath and everything, but they were doing it with hate and greed and lust and envy and jealousy and power, greedy of power and all that in their heart. So they weren't really keeping right. It was for nothing. So he's like, keep the commandments still, but don't forsake the compassion and all this. What did he tell the Pharisees? You should have tithed, you should have done the compassion and the love and the mercy and the fruit of the Ruach without neglecting, without forsaking the latter, the tithing of the mint and all that. Like, do both. Do the mechanical, the outward, and the internal, the external and the internal, because we are both right now. We're made up of everything, so we got to do it in every way. Distinguish the difference between the clean and unclean in every way. And pretty soon, the language is going to be a big thing too. We should mention the names of other mighty ones. That still seems to be a stumbling block, but Zephaniah 3:9 is happening, where it says, "And in that day I shall, give everybody a pure lip, that they shall call on me with one accord." Zephaniah 3:9. In that day they shall call on my name with one tongue, with a pure lip. Hebrew, the original Hebrew. I studied the ancient. I have a book, and it actually shows how every letter pictograph was designed to reveal a nature of Yahuwah and existence and creation and the perfect order of everything. And there's no, wickedness in it. There's no design to curse and to hate, to all that, like the way we can in our languages. It's not there. It's in there, but it's like forbidden. It's like the thing that's left for Yahuwah to. Basically, it's the mindset of Yahuwah rebuke you. It's the word Ga'ar. Ga'ar means to like rebuke, and the way we use it, it's not like I rebuke anyone. No, and I don't curse no one. It's Yahuwah rebuke you. May Yahuwah, correct you. Yahuwah straighten you out. So the ancient Hebrew is a pure language. So that being said, I'm learning a lot. What I'm trying to say is the harvest is ripe. We're in the days of the Feast of Weeks, Shabbat. We're about to do the wheat harvest. This is the harvest of those who are going to get it through tribulation. They're going to understand, but they're going to have a stronger fire. And but this is still in the time of the Shabbat, the festival weeks, where we're still gathering the last of the barley of the true righteous elect, and we're gathering them in the byways and highways too. There's a lot of good barley people out there that you can plant barley seed in and harvest them at the same time. It's all dynamical. It's all one, right? Yahuwah's one. Yahusha's one. Everything in the time of Yahuwah is all at once. It's not defined by a timeline. Yahusha was slain from the foundations of the earth. Yahusha was slain from the foundation of the earth, even before anything came to be. It was already thought up. It was done before everything. It just manifested in a timeline for us to see it in its proper time. Alright, so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started on Romans chapter 7. We're going to read Romans 7 and 8. We're going to go ahead, if you want to join me, get your scriptures, and let's go through Romans 7 and 8. And we're going to pray first. We praise you and thank you, Abba Yahuwah, for this day that you have made. We will be glad and rejoice in it, or we will rejoice and be glad in it. Either way, praise Yah. We thank you and praise you, Abba Yahuwah, for this day and for all your barakut and for all your provision, for all your love and mercy and compassion, for favor, for wisdom, and for strength. Thank you for trustworthiness and correction, and thank you for restoring us and giving us a sound mind to worship you with all our mind, our lab, and our strength, our heart and our strength. We praise you and thank you, Abba Yahuwah, for the forgiveness of sins through the blood of Yahusha Mashiach, our Adon, our Elohim, our Lamb and Redeemer. And we praise you and thank you for eternal Chai, through the power of the resurrection, through the Ruach HaKodash in Yahusha Mashiach, our Adon, our Elohim, our King of Kings and our Prince of Peace, and our Kuhan HaGadol, our eternal Chai and everlasting righteousness, our Rahaban Shalom, and all our fruit of the Ruach, forever and ever. We praise you and thank you, Abba Yahuwah and Yahusha Mashiach, our Adon, our Elohim, our King of Kings and our Prince of Peace, and our Kuhan HaGadol, forever and ever. Aman and Aman and Aman. Hallelujah, Yahuwah, Yahusha. Alright, praise Yah. So let's continue. Abba Yahuwah, we ask that you just give us ears to hear, eyes to see, a heart to understand, a mind to perceive. In your name, King Yahusha. Amen. Romans chapter 7. Or do you not know, brothers? For I speak to those knowing the Torah. So who's he speaking to? the Yahudim, those knowing the Torah, that the Torah rules over a man as long as he lives. For the married woman has been bound by Torah to the living husband, but if the husband dies, she is released from the Torah of her husband. So while her husband lives, she shall be called an adulteress if she becomes another man's. But if her husband dies, she is free from that Torah, so that she is not an adulteress, having become another man's. So, my brothers, you also were put to death to the Torah through the body of Mashiach, for you to become another's, the one who was raised from the dead, that we should bear fruit to Elohim, that we should bear fruit to Elohim. So what is Shaul talking about? He's saying for the married woman has been bound by Torah to the living husband, but if the husband dies, she is released from the Torah of her husband. He's talking about the two different covenants. The first covenant, but when Yahusha died, he died in our place to end the first covenant in part of the Father, because they're one, so that we can be remarried. He died, he's all in all, he's all in one. So he died as the husband, so that we can remarry into a new covenant, but he also died on behalf of Yasharal, so our sins are forgiven. He was the the law of the jealous husband. The wife that committed adultery, let her thighs give away and her belly swell. That's what happened to Yahusha on the stake. Because he was hanging, Yahusha's belly swelled and his thigh gave waste. When he couldn't hold himself no more, he let his legs go. His thigh, wasted away. That's what that Torah was about. So he took our place as what we should have died or our ancestors in the first covenant. Yasharah is the whore. So everything was died, everything was renewed, a new covenant. And so the first covenant was the law that the flesh is unable to keep. The flesh was weak to the Torah. The Torah was weak in that it could not make the flesh obey. We're going to read that later. But praise Yah for the renewed covenant. Now he gives us the Ruach, gives us the empowerment to do so. I shall put my Ruach within you, my heart of flesh in you, to cause you to walk in my laws and guard my right rulings, and you shall do them. And so now we're no longer under the first covenant where it's just of the flesh and we can't keep it. You sin, you die. It was not mixed with belief. We didn't have the fullness of it, the goal of the Torah, which is Yahusha manifested, to give us that real strong expectation and hope. Back then, people were just doing it like, yeah, this is our religion. I don't know if it's true or not, but yeah, it's our tradition. But they weren't really doing it by belief. It wasn't really in relationship. But when Yahushua was manifested, he put to shame all the other principalities, all the other religions, beliefs. This is the real religion. So now we can put our expectation in him to walk out these commandments. And so the motive we're going to see Yahusha, Shaul addressing is that we get fixated on looking to Yahusha in the new renewed covenant, and it'll help us. That alone will empower us to keep the covenant, because when we focus on the covenant itself, it is possible to take our eyes off Yahusha, and then we become, in a sense, spiritually putting ourselves to try to be justified under the law again. And that's what he was trying to get at when in this whole argument with the Jews, because they're like, okay, Yahusha, we believe him, but their mind was so trained, so conditioned in Torah, being justified by Torah, they were still doing that. Even though, we're trusting Yahushua, but man, I got to keep these commandments, got to be justified. It's like, listen, forget all that. You're not justified by keeping Torah alone, apart from belief in Yahushua. Focus on that. Be thankful for what he did. He's cleansed you of your sins. He paved the way. Worship him, love him. Be thankful for what he did for us. And that Torah part, you already have naturally. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't subject yourself under fear. You know what I'm saying? Again, that's what he's getting at, because they were receiving Yahusha, but then they were again under that bondage of fear of sin and death. Like, no, you're now made children of Yahuwah now. You're not under fear. Let's look at that real quick. I'm gonna jump back to Revelation 6, because that was the last one we read. Revelation 5 6, and before we go into 7, I just want to get context again. Let's see. It's saying right here. Let's do 6:15. It says, or let's start at 12. 6:12. Therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body to obey in its desires. Neither present your members as instruments of unrighteousness to sin. This is the law of sin and death, by the way. He's expounding on, people think that the law of sin and death, when you see it again in chapter 8, it's talking about the law of Moses. That's the law of sin and death. No, he just brought it up in chapter 6. So I'm glad we're going back, because we're going to make sure we get that first. We're going to see sin and death put together in that same way in chapter 6, so that when we see it in chapter 8, we know what the law of sin and death is. So I'm going to go back actually to verse 10. For in that he died to sin once for all. But in that he lives to Elohim. So he died to the flesh, but lives to Yahuwah. So you also reckon yourselves to be dead indeed to sin. Not dead to the law, to the Torah, dead to sin, but alive to Elohim and Mashiach Yahusha, Aradon. Therefore, do not let sin reign in your mortal body to obey in its desires. Neither present your members as instruments of unrighteousness to sin, but present yourselves to Elohim, to Yahuwah Yahusha, as being alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness to Elohim. For sin shall not rule over you, the law of sin and death. Sin shall not rule over you. That law of sin and death shall not rule over you. For you are not under the law, but under compassion. It's talking about the law of sin and death. But he's going to reflect it as he's talking about Torah. What then? Shall we sin because we are not under law, but under compassion and favor? Let it not be. Do you not know that to whom you present yourselves servants for obedience, you are servants of the one whom you obey? Whether of sin to death, there's the law of sin and death. He says right there just the same way. Whether of sin to death, or of obedience to righteousness. What's the other law contrary to the law of sin and death? The law of the Ruach, right? There's the law of sin and death, there's the law of Ruach. Here it's called the law of obedience to righteousness. That's the law of the Ruach. The Ruach moves you to obedience to righteousness, that it might be fulfilled in you. Not imputed, where you're just made righteous because you believe. No, because you believe, you fulfill the righteous requirements. You walk into them, that they might be fulfilled in you. That you might fully fill it up. You might raise that standard to walk into it. That were into the good works that were prepared beforehand. The Torah was prepared beforehand at Mount Sinai, that we shall do them. Do you not know that to whom you present yourselves servants for obedience, you are servants of the one whom you obey, whether of sin and death or of obedience to righteousness? But thanks to Yahuwah our Elohim, that you were servants of sin, yet you obeyed from the heart that form of teaching to which you were entrusted. And having been let free from what? Let free from sin, you became servants of righteousness. What is righteousness? Your Torah is your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your Torah is the truth. Your Torah is righteousness, though. Also, there's a lot of verses says righteousness is Torah. I speak as a man because of the weakness of your flesh. For even as you presented your members as servants of uncleanness and of lawlessness, what's that talking about? Lawlessness is not you run red lights. Lawlessness is talking about anti-Torah-lessness, anti-Torah-ness, that you break the commandments. It says, for even as you presented your members as servants of uncleanness and of lawlessness, of breaking the Torah, resulting in commandment breaking, lawlessness, so now present your members as servants of righteousness, resulting in Kudashah. What's the opposite of breaking commandments? Keeping the commandments, keeping the Torah, which he calls righteousness, resulting of Kodashah. Why did Yahusha just speak, or why did Shaul speak this way? And why wasn't he not just straight up and say, keep the commandments? Because he's speaking to Gentiles too. He didn't want to push them away and put them, and also he wanted to keep in the gray, to leave room for the Ruach to work, to cause them to keep the Torah by their own desire. He didn't want to push, like, you got to keep Torah or you're going to hell. You know what I'm saying? He didn't want to just be clean cut like, he could have maybe said that when you love Yahusha and are thankful for what he's done, he'll move you to want to keep these things. But he don't want to take from the fact that first there needs to be an intimate relationship established with Yahusha first by belief. You need to have that moment. And then the rest will follow later. He trusted the Ruach to do that work regardless. And that's where he's coming from. He's trying to be, very light on that. And having been let free from sin, you became servants of righteousness. So he's trying to get people to think, the Gentiles like, well, what is righteousness? What is Kodashah? Like, how do I become, the Torah, okay. He's trying to let them make that decision on their own by the Ruach. He's not trying to impose it on them. I speak as a man because of the weakness of your flesh, for even as you presented your members as servants of uncleanness and of lawlessness, breaking the Torah, resulting in lawlessness, so now present your members as the opposite of servants of righteousness, resulting in Kodashah, which is, hint, hint, wink, wink, keeping the commandments. For when you were servants of sin, you were free from righteousness. You were free from keeping the commandments because you were breaking the commandments. What fruit, therefore, were you having then, over which you are now ashamed? For the end thereof is death. But now having been let free from sin, not the Torah, but from sin that leads to death, and having become servants of Elohim, you have your fruit resulting in Kodashah, and the end everlasting high. For the wages of sin is death, the law of sin and death. What is the law of sin and death? It's telling you what the law of sin and death is right here. For the wages of sin is death. That's the law of sin and death. But the favorable gift of Elohim, his compassion and loving gift, favorable of Elohim, is the gift is everlasting high in Mashiach Yahusha our Adon. So now the favorable gift, when you receive that, you're full of love and encouragement. You're forgiven. You live in a freedom. You're now called children of Yahuwah, not in subjection by a master who's not your own. Now he's your father, and so you have that confidence. Your father forgives you. He loves you, and now you want to please your father in the Ruach. It's not, I don't know who this higher deity is, power that's imposing these laws, but he's putting us to death. If we break them, I'm scared. No, now it's, man, he forgives us. He's become a loving father to me. I want to please him, and if I mess up, I messed up, and I repent, and I trust he'll forgive me, and I'm going to keep on going with joy and growing in this expectation of eternal high. That's the law of the Ruach in Mashiach Yahusha our Don. Chapter 7. Or do you not know, brothers, for I speak to those knowing the Torah, that the Torah rules over a man as long as he lives? We read this. For the married woman has been bound by Torah to the living husband. But if the husband dies, she is released from the Torah of her husband. So being released from the first covenant of sin and death, that you didn't have the Ruach to obey, and let's just see if you can do this on your own. But now Yahushua came to manifest how to die for us, just to know that this is the real way of Chai. See what I'm saying? In one dynamic. So then, while her husband lives, she shall be called an adulteress if she becomes another man's. But if her husband dies, she is free from that Torah, so that she is not an adulteress. Free from the Torah. If you sin, you die. You can, the Israelites hardened their heart to the Ruach, and it was not mixed with belief to trust in it, so they broke it. Their heart was hardened towards it, deep down, having become another man's. So, my brothers, you also were put to death to the Torah through the body of Mashiach, for you to become another's. Mashiach Yahusha and his resurrection of Chai, that leads to the righteousness of the Torah. The one who was raised from the dead, that we should bear fruit to Elohim. What is bearing fruit about? We read bearing fruit twice already. At the end of chapter 6, it says, verse 22, but now having been let free from sin and having become servants of Elohim, you have your fruit resulting in Kodashah and the end everlasting high. This is the end of chapter 6. And then 7, it's still in the same topic. It says, it says in verse 4, so my brothers, you were put to death to the Torah of sin and death through the body of Mashiach, for you to become another's, the one who was raised from the dead, that we should bear fruit to Elohim. So you see a lot of bearing fruit that's mentioned that's overlooked, because if we're looking at a different lens, we're just like, yeah, bearing fruit, whatever, okay, what else? But chapter 6, chapter 7, all these chapters is all one like paragraph in a sense. It's all one. To think that one is taking context away from another, it's not. Because we like to think this chapter said one thing, but another chapter says another. You're reading certain little things that were brought up to make certain points. It's a philosophical way of speaking. You sort of draw up let's just say, for example, right, kind of talk, and that's what he's doing. He's being theoretical to prove a point, but we take it as, oh, look, he said the law is done away with. But that's why you see Shaul says, am I saying that the law is sin? By no means. Do we then do away with the Torah because of our belief? Because what I just said theoretically? By no means. We established the Torah. I was just being theoretical. I was trying to just prove a point, expound on a dynamic by, let's just say, in theory, that we do away with the Torah. You gotta. That's why Peter even says Paul's hard to understand. If you can't grasp that, you shouldn't be reading Paul. It's even almost okay in a way to even, you don't really need Paul. If he's causing too much confusion in your heart, if you're letting what you read in Paul mean to you that he's doing away with the commandments, you shouldn't be reading Paul, because Paul even says himself, I've not come to change anything, but I'm preaching the same word, that the master YAHUSHA gave me, that the YAHUSHA taught. So what did YAHUSHA teach? I did not come to do it along the prophets, but to raise the standard. And he says, I'm not taking away anything from him. And if anybody takes away from the teaching of YAHUSHA, withdraw from such. That would even mean himself. And so we think he's taken away, then we need to withdraw from him. And you're not understanding him accurately. So you need to make him right. You need to make him agree with the same thing that YAHUSHA is saying. And when you do that, you'll actually see exactly what he's saying. Tehillim, chapter 1. Baruch is the man who shall not walk in the counsel of the wicked, and shall not stand in the path of sinners, and shall not sit in the seat of scoffers. All these wicked paths, sinners, counsels, people that judge and accuse and condemn and talk bad about people, is really what it is. Not just necessarily sinning in their actions, but they're sinning by doing that. That's a form of wickedness right now, because Satan is called the accuser of the brethren. Even if that's all he did, he would be wicked for that. And he does it day and night. But his delight is in the Torah. See, Baruch is a man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, but his delight is in the Torah of Yahuwah, and he meditates in his Torah day and night on the law. And what does that do? For he shall be as a tree planted by the rivers of water that yield its fruit. That's what Shaul was talking about when he says that, resulting in bearing fruit unto Elohim. If he's like saying, go back in the Torah and see what this means. Go back in the Psalms. That when we meditate on the Torah day and night, we shall be as a tree planted by the rivers of water that yields its fruit in its season, and whose leaf does not wither, and whatever he does prosper. The wicked are not so, but are like the chaff, the wind, which the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked shall not rise in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For Yahuwah knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked comes to nothing, to naught. So bearing fruit unto Elohim is talking about keeping Torah, because he meditates in his Torah day and night. For he shall be as a tree planted by the rivers of water that yields its fruit in its season, by meditating on the Torah day and night. And so we see, but now, you having been let free from sin and having become servants of Elohim, you have your fruit resulting in Korashah, and the end everlasting high, trusting in Yahusha and keeping his commandments. For the wages of sin is death, but the favorable gift of Elohim is everlasting high, in Mashiach Yahusha our dawn. Skip it down again. So my brothers, you also were put to death to the Torah of sin and death, through the body of Mashiach, for you to become another's, the one who is raised from the dead, that we should bear fruit to Elohim. For when we were in the flesh, there you go, this is the opposite. For when we were in the flesh, the passions of sins through the Torah were working in our members to bear the fruit to death. So it's saying that the law is bad and makes us sin? No. It's saying that the law will manifest what is sin and cause our sin nature to activate, to try to get us to fight against it. For when we were in the flesh, the passions of the sins through the Torah were working in our members to bear fruit to death. But now we have been released from the Torah of sin and death, having died to what we were held by, so that we should serve in newness of Ruach and not in oldness of letter. Not doing it just in our flesh and by the letter, without the heart, without knowing Yahusha, having that full manifestation, that relationship, being empowered by his Ruach to be in us, his heart of flesh to be in us, to walk in them and do them. What then shall we say? Is the Torah sin? Let it not be. However, so he says himself, every time people want to say, they'll do this. So my brothers, you were put to death to the Torah, to the body of Mashiach. See? And all this kind of stuff, But then right here, it's like, you got to read the whole chapter, because then he says, what then shall we say? Is the Torah sin? Let it not be. However, I did not know sin except through the Torah. For also the covetousness I knew not, if the Torah had not said, you shall not covet. In other words, sin lies dormant in us. We think we're righteous, we think we're good, but as long as we're sort of manifesting here a little, there a little bit, sin working with demonic forces, the flesh nature putting us to death slowly, will still kill us slowly and will not let us, will not manifest that to us, will not make us aware of it. But once the Torah makes it aware to our conscience, then the flesh wants to fight back by, we're going to fight back. This is how wicked we are. And we're going to this is who we are. This is our identity. We can't change. You know what I'm saying? We can never keep it, right? Because then we're doing it by letter. And that's what he's talking about. He says, but now we have been released from the Torah, having died to what we were held by, so that we should serve in newness of Ruach. Do it in the Ruach and not in oldness of letter. We're trying to do it in the letter, but just by fighting it. But we need the empowerment of Yahusha. We need to pray, ask for forgiveness. Yahusha, strengthen me, put your breath in me to overcome this, and make me new, a new man. Make me Kadash and perfect as you are. What then shall we say? Is the Torah sin? Let it not be. I did not know sin except through the Torah. For also the covetousness I know not, if the Torah had not said, you shall not covet. But sin, having taken the occasion through the command. In other words, sin, having taken advantage, taking the occasion is like having found a loophole, having, try to take advantage of this situation through the command, worked in me covetousness. So it didn't like the fact that it called it out. Sin acted a fool. Sin, decided to act out when it was called out by the Torah. It decided to work all kinds of covetousness. For apart from the Torah, sin is dead. Apart from the Torah, sin is dead. So in other words, when there's no Torah, there's nothing, causing it to stir up. Like when you take certain medications, what it'll do is it'll cause certain things to mature, to manifest so it can come out more, so you can cut it off. And that's sort of what he's talking about. You see a pipette, you drop a little chemical on it, gets it all out, then you can cut it off. And that's what he's talking about. And he's saying, apart from the Torah, had we not had the Torah, we wouldn't know what sin was. Sin would be dead to us. And I was alive apart from the Torah once, but when the command came, the sin revived. See what I'm saying? It was lying dormant. I was alive. He's not saying he was alive like he was alive in the Ruach, like he had been better, he had not known, he would have been free. No, he's just saying, I felt alive. I was like, I feel so alive. He just felt so good. Life is good. I love my life. He felt very not I love my life like that, but he felt very, living the dream, all that kind of stuff, right? Because it wasn't thrown in his face to convict him of his sin. So he felt alive in his flesh. And I was alive. I felt I was all right. I thought I was good. My conscience seemed clean apart from the Torah at one point. But when the command came, then the sin revived and I died. When the command came, it exposed, it confronted my sin. It let me actually dwell on it and be aware of it. It made it aware to me, and it manifested. It brought it up and confronted me face to face, and I died. I'm like, man, I'm a sinner. And the command which was to result in high, this I found resulted in death. It only accused me, let me know I deserve death. For sin, having taken the occasion through the command, having overriding the command, right? Like taking the occasion, taking advantage of it, worked over it, overpowered it, the command, deceived me, and killed through it, so that the Torah truly is Kadash, and the command Kadash, and righteous and good. So he's saying, so I see that it's good because it made the sin manifest out of me. It made me act a fool. It made me war inside myself and act out. So I know that the command is good because it made these demons mad, made my flesh warm, made my flesh mad. Therefore, has that which is good become death to me? Let it not be. In other words, is the Torah which is good like, like is that like death to me, like it kills me and I'm in opposition to it? Let it not be. But that sin might be manifest, what we were just talking about this whole time, was working death in me through what is good. So what is good caused the sin to manifest so that we can fight this fight and get it out the way. It needs to manifest so we can overcome it, deal with it, confront it, and get it out the way. So that sin through the command might become an exceedingly great sinner. Let sin manifest great sinner. In other words, let the Torah keep exposing me of my wickedness, and let it manifest and pull it out so that it can become a exceedingly great sinner in me to get it out. The only way you get anything out is by it manifesting. If you have a cyst, it just can't magically disappear. You got open that when you see, like when you got that, like the big cysts that come out, all that, and no matter how many times you keep squeezing, you think you're done. You keep squeezing, and that thing is an exceedingly great sinner. That thing there's a lot of that in there. You didn't even know what was in there. You thought it was just this little white head sticking out, right? That's what he's saying. I thought I just had I'm a little covetous, but as soon as I saw a command, it bursted open all this nasty gunk and kept coming out. For we know that the Torah is ruach, but I am fleshly, sold under sin. For what I work, I know not. For what I want, that I do not practice. I want to do good. For what I work, man, I don't even know what I'm doing. I know not. For what I want, I do not practice. I want to do good, right? He's going to mention later, so I'm not going to go into that too much. But what I hate, that I do. Like I do the very things I hate. But if I do what I do not want, right? If I do the sin that I don't want to do, I agree with the Torah that it is good. Man, the Torah is good. It's me who's wicked. And I know this is a real thing, because how is it that what I don't want to do, the bad I don't want to do, I do, but the good I want to do, I don't do? How is that even possible? I am not in control of myself. I don't know what I'm doing. For what I work, I know not. I can't even control it. So there's something in me warring that needs to be submitted, that needs to be broken down and cut off. Like if we've all experienced that. A good we wanted to do, we didn't do. And the bad we didn't want to do, that we did. And that lets us know this Bible's real. At the end of the day, that's a great testimony for any human, because every human being alive can testify to that principle, that law. And that tells us that it's because our flesh nature it's got a glitch, it's got a virus, it's got a bug. It's like a computer program that has a virus in it, and it's gonna pull out the thing we don't want to do, and what we want it to do, it doesn't do. It's cursed, it's corrupt, it's been compromised, and it's heeding to the voice of Hashatan, the enemy, working with it. When Adam and Eve obeyed the serpent, they gave their subjection, their submission, their allegiance to the voice of Hashatan in their flesh. The flesh nature is owned by Hashatan. So we have to put it to death. We have to fight that fight to show that we're not submitting. We're undoing the works of Adam and Eve by submitting ourselves to the works of Yahusha. That's why Yahusha had to come. He's the goal of the Torah. By believing in him, we're able to do it. Now we're able to follow what he did through the Ruach, his heart in us, his Ruach, and his breath in us. Praise Yah. For what I work, I know not. For what I want, that I do not practice. But what I hate, that I do. But if I do what I do not want, I agree with the Torah that it is good. Man, this is the law is good. It's real, because I can't keep it. My flesh stirs up against it, so I know I'm a sinner. I know I'm wicked, is what this is trying to say. And now it is no longer I that work it, but the sin dwelling in me. He's like, I'm not choosing to do this. In other words, in my mind, I'm not consciously like, this is what I want to do. It's something in me. It's in my flesh. The sin dwelling in me. It dwells in the flesh. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwells no good. Right? Now I know. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwells no good. For to want is present with me, but to work the good I do not find. What does it mean for to want is present with me? He just said he struggled with covetousness. Shaul is exposing, revealing one of his sins. He says the sin he struggled with was wanting. Yahuwah is my shepherd, I shall not want. Right? Psalms 23. And he said, when I didn't know about covetousness, I thought I was cool. I was alive. I felt great. But once, the command came, do not covet, it put me to death. Covet, wanting, that was the sin. So he says, for to want or for to covet is present with me, but to work the good I do not find. But to actually, deny that, to deny coveting, I can't do it. I want to covet, that's present with me. I want things. But the good that I know I shouldn't want them, I do not find. It's beating me. I'm coveting. For the good that I want to do, I do not do. But the evil I do not want to do, that I practice. Shaul is saying, I covet. And if I do that which I do not want, if I do the sin I covet, even though I don't want to, it is no longer I who work it, but the sin dwelling in me. It's my flesh. I'm doing it still, but it's like I'm not in control. It's the flesh nature. I find therefore this law, this principle. He found therefore the Torah. This is the Torah, the commandments. No. He's saying law a lot of times. Law of sin and death is you sin, you die. Law of the Ruach is believing in Yahusha to be made righteous, to do the righteousness of the law. Now he finds another law, another principle, because he lived in philosophical times when it's all about law of gravity, law of science, law of motion, and all this stuff. He wanted to be philosophical. That's just Shaul. He was a writer. He was, a student. He was, in the colleges kind of guy. I find therefore this law, that when I want to do the good, that evil is present with me. He found this principle, this law of the universe, that when he wants to do the good, the evil is right there with him, waiting to mess it up, try to corrupt it. For I delight in the Torah of Yahuwah, according to the inward man. He delights in it. That's what he wants to do. He likes the Torah. He says, for I delight in the Torah of Yahuwah, according to the inward man. He didn't say, I'm glad, I want to abolish it. He says he delights in the commandments, in the Torah. But I see another law, another dynamic or principle, universal law, in my members, battling against the Torah of my mind. See, this is all about the mind and the flesh. And bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. There goes the law of sin and death. So is it saying that there's a law but I see another law in my members battling against the Torah of my mind, bringing me into the captivity of the Torah? No, bringing me into the law of sin, which is in my members, to break the Torah. There's a law of the flesh that wants to break the Torah, that battles the law of my mind, that wants to keep the Torah. Wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death? Thanks to Yahuwah, through Yahusha HaMashiach Aradon. So then, with the mind, I myself truly serve the Torah of Yahuwah, but with the flesh, the law of sin. But then what he's saying here, wretched man am I, who shall deliver me from this body of death? Who shall deliver me from this flesh that keeps on sinning? Thanks to Yahuwah through Yahusha Mashiach Aradon. So then, with the mind I myself truly serve Torah of Yahuwah, but the flesh the law of sin. But that's all about the change. Chapter 8. See, he put these chapters, sometimes it gets confusing. He's saying, he's still thanking Yahusha, thanks to Yahuwah, that I serve Yahuwah with my mind, but with my flesh I serve sin. But now that's about to change. Chapter 8. For there is then Now, no condemnation to those who are in Mashiach Yahusha. Not just believe, but who do what? Who do not walk according to the flesh. What he just said, I myself truly serve the Torah of Yahuwah, both the flesh, the law of sin. But now he doesn't serve that flesh, but walks according to the Ruach. For the Torah of the Ruach of the Chai and HaMashiach Yahusha has freed me from the law of sin and death. What's the law of sin and death? They say, oh, freed, see, he was freed from the Torah because the Torah only leads to sin and death. He described it that way. It's not that the Torah is wicked. He just says the Torah evil. No, by no means. It's the flesh. Going back to 6, it says, what then shall we say? Shall we continue in sin to let favor increase? Let it not be. How shall we who died to sin still live in it? Or do you not know that as many of us who were immersed in Mashiach Yahusha were immersed into his death? We were therefore buried with him through immersion into death, that as Mashiach was raised from the dead by the esteem of the Father, so also we should walk in newness of Chai. For if we came to be grown together in the likeness of his death, we shall be also of the resurrection. Knowing this, that our old man was impaled with him, so that the body of sin might be rendered powerless. So when we have faith, trust in Yahusha, Amunah, trust in Yahusha, the law of the Ruach, it puts to death the sin, the law of sin, so that it's powerless, has no more power, so that the body of sin might be rendered powerless to serve sin no longer. For he who has died has made right from sin. And if we die with Mashiach, we believe that we shall also live with him, knowing that Mashiach, having been raised from the dead, dies no more. Death no longer rules over him. For in that he died to sin once for all. But in that he lives to Elohim. So you also reckon yourselves to be dead indeed to sin, but alive to Elohim in Mashiach Yahusha our Adon. Therefore do not let sin reign in your mortal body to obey its desires. Neither present your members as instruments of unrighteousness. Don't be doing no fornicating, adultery, and wicked sexual things now to sin. But present yourselves to Elohim as being alive from the dead, and your members as instrument of righteousness to Elohim. For we shall be like the Malachim. They neither marry or given into marriage, but they're pure. For sin shall not rule over you, for you are not under the law, but under compassion and favor. The law of sin and death shall not rule over you. Not under that same letter where you're focusing on the letter, but you're focusing on Yahusha, who causes you to walk in the commandments by the love you have for him. You want to please him. You're not looking at the letters, you're looking at the master to please him, to keep the commandments. You're not looking at the letters for the fear of the condemnation. You're looking at Yahusha to please him, and that causes you to keep the commandments as well. As Pastor Gary Simon of Triumphant Truth says, we don't keep the law because of the fear of death, but we keep the law because we love the one who paid the price of death, or something like that. Or as some people say, keeping the Torah, we don't keep the commandments to be saved, but we keep the commandments as evidence of our salvation. Praise Yah. For sin shall not rule over you, for you are not under the law, but under compassion. What then? Shall we sin because we are not under law, but under compassion and favor? Let it not be. Do you not know that to whom you present yourselves servants for obedience, you are servants of the one whom you obey, whether of sin to death, there's a law of sin and death, whether you obey sin to death, or of obedience to righteousness. That should be like the most highlighted scripture when we present this to people, when it's saying the law of sin and death is not the Torah. It's saying right here, do you not know to whom you present yourselves servants for obedience, you are servants of the one whom you obey, whether of sin and death, which is sin you die, or of obedience to righteousness, that's the law of the Ruach. But thanks to Elohim that you were servants of sin, yet you obeyed from the heart that form of teaching which you were entrusted, and having been let free from sin, you became servants of righteousness. And you can go on. Everything you read, refer back to Romans 6 every time you get confused about the concept of law, sin, and death, because it's constantly broken down in that chapter. So, and he's just expounding it on the other chapters, really. For the Torah of the Ruach of Chai and Mashiach Yahusha has freed me from the law of sin and death, and of death. Does that make sense? For the Torah of the Ruach of the Chai of Hamashiach Yahusha has freed me from the law of sin and of death, which we just read in chapter 6. You sin, you die. Not the law of Moses, not the Torah. For the Torah being powerless in that it was weak through the flesh, Yahuwah having his own bond in the likeness of flesh of sin, and concerning sin condemned sin in the flesh. So the righteousness of the Torah should be completed in us who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Ruach. So what is that saying? For the Torah being powerless, in that it was weak through the flesh. So people are saying, see, the Torah had no power. There's no power in the Torah. But then later Shaul says that the Torah is Ruachul, and it leads to Chai. And that's all the prophets, the Nabim in the writings say. All the law, everything says that the Torah, if you do it, you shall live by them. You shall have life, Chai. You shall have Chai, eternal Chai, by doing them. So what does this mean for the Torah being powerless, in that it was weak through the flesh? Although it's saying that the Torah is Chai if you do them, but it didn't have power to make you obey it. For the Torah being powerless, in that it was weak through the flesh, the Torah was powerless. It had no power. It was weak in your flesh. It didn't have power over the flesh to make you obey it. It didn't have power to make the flesh obey it. That's what it was saying. Yahuwah having his own bond in the likeness of flesh of sin, and concerning sin condemned sin in the flesh. So he destroyed that work when he overcame all sins. He overcame all the temptations, and he did the commandments. He put that power to death. The power of the flesh that overpowers the Torah is what he's talking about. He condemned it and put that to death, so that the Torah might now be given power through the Ruach, that we might not have power even in the flesh by putting it to death, but revive new in the Ruach to keep the commandments. We're a new creation. We're not even flesh no more. We just can't see that yet, but it's going to come off so we can. So that the righteousness of the Torah should be completed. What does that mean? Should be done, should be walked out, shall be fulfilled, you should do it. Right? It doesn't mean so that the righteousness of the Torah is imputed upon you. It's just present. It's just, you're righteous. Yahuwah just sees Yahusha, and the blood covers you no matter what you do. No, that's not written anywhere. So that the righteousness of the Torah should be completed in us, shall be done in us, walked out in us, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Ruach. See how the walking part fit in context? Because it says who do not walk according to the flesh. Why? Because the righteousness of the Torah needs to be walked out in you by the Ruach. See what I'm saying? It needs to be walked out. You need to do it. There's nowhere where pastors and preachers say, oh, the righteousness is imputed on you, so that no matter how many times you sin, no matter what you've done, all he sees is the blood. He just sees Yahusha. Not if you're not walking like him. If you're walking like flesh, he's going to see flesh. You're covered by the blood, so your sins are forgiven. You don't have access for atonement for sins, but you have to be walking like Yahusha for Yahuwah to see Yahusha at the judgment. You got to look like Yahusha at the end of the day. Granted, there's going to be some rough edges. He's going to sand it, smooth it out, polish it up, all that good stuff. But for the most part, you got to be pretty perfect. He says, if your righteousness does not exceed that of scribes and Pharisees, you're by no means getting in. Whoever breaks and relaxes and abolishes one of the least of the commandments, there's more than 10. Whoever abolishes the least of them shall be called least by those who are in the kingdom. They shall be least by those who are in the kingdom. But whoever does and teaches men to do them shall be called great. You want to be great? Do and keep the commandments by the Ruach, because you should love it. Don't do it because you're trying to earn your way in. That's like the letter in a sense. You should love Yahushua for what he's done for you so much, you want to live for him by keeping Torah. So, again, verse 4 says, let's go back a little bit. For the Torah being powerless in that it was weak through the flesh, Yahuwah having his own bond in the likeness of flesh of sin, and concerning sin, condemned sin in the flesh, took away the power of the flesh to make us break Torah, so that the righteousness of the Torah should be walked out in us who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Ruach. Does that make more sense? Praise Yah. I'm going to work on a version of Yahuwah put in my heart. That'd be cool. I want to do something like that. Make it simple like that. And call it the meek version. The meek version, which stands for Messianic, easily expounded knowledge version. The Messianic, easily expounded knowledge, or something like that version. The meek version. And just like take all these things Shaul wrote and a lot of other things and just simplify it and rewrite it, like kind of like the NLT, but in the right way, in the right way. So that the righteousness of the Torah should be walked out through us who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Ruach. For those who live according to the flesh put their minds on that of the flesh, but those according to the Ruach, that of the Ruach. For the mind of the flesh is death, but the mind of the Ruach is chai and peace, because the mind of the flesh is enmity towards Elohim, for it does not subject itself to the Torah of Yahuwah, neither indeed is it able. So if the Torah is so bad, if the commandment leads to sin and death, as Christians claim, and we're not to keep the commandments, then how does this verse right here make sense where it says, because the mind of the flesh is enmity, it's in opposition towards Yahuwah. How is it in opposition to Yahuwah? For it does not subject itself to the Torah. So when you say that the Torah is done away with, and whoever tries to do the Torah is under a curse, you're actually making yourself the enemy, because it says because the mind of the flesh is in opposition towards Yahuwah. And what is in opposition towards Yahuwah? That mind that does not subject itself to the Torah of Yahuwah, neither indeed is it able. Case closed. And those who are in the flesh are unable to please Yahuwah, to please Elohim. Why? Because in their flesh, they're saying that the Torah is done away with. Because the mind of the flesh is in enmity, its enemy, its opposition towards Yahuwah. For it does not subject itself to the Torah. So, if you reverse engineer that, Yahuwah defines him being in his favor, if you're not an enemy, is if you are subjecting yourself to the Torah and are able to do it. Because the mind of the flesh is enmity in opposition towards Elohim, for it does not subject itself to the Torah of Yahuwah, neither indeed is it able to. Because the mind of the Ruach is in agreement with Yahuwah Elohim, for it does subject itself to the Torah of Yahuwah and indeed obeys it. See how it plays out if you just reverse engineer it? He's saying it right there. And those who are in the flesh are unable to please Yahuwah. So those who are in the Ruach are able to please him because they walk in agreement with Yahuwah Elohim, for it does subject itself to the Torah of Yahuwah and is able to obey it. And those who are in the Ruach are able to please Yahuwah if you switched it around. But because the mind of the flesh is in enmity towards Yahuwah Elohim, it's in opposition, for it does not subject itself to the Torah of Yahuwah, neither indeed is it able to obey it. And those who are in the flesh are unable to please Yahuwah Elohim. But you are not in the flesh, but are in the Ruach. So if you're in the Ruach, now it's expounding what the law of the Ruach is. If you're in the Ruach, you're in agreement towards Yahuwah Elohim, for you do subject yourself to the Torah of Yahuwah and are able to do it, to obey it. And you will be found pleasing to Yahuwah. You are able to please him. But you are not in the flesh, but in the Ruach. If indeed the Ruach of Elohim dwells in you, and if anyone does not have the Ruach of Hamashiach, this one is not his. And if Hamashiach is in you, the body is truly dead on account of sin, the flesh nature, but the Ruach is high on account of righteousness. What does that mean? There's so much righteousness thrown in these scriptures, we just think it's like a magical word because we're veiled. You see what I'm saying? Because there's an incantation of spirit that through all those false GRACE, all these words, FAITH, that they use in the church, it sears us from these other words that are more profound, that have a profound meaning. We write it off as just a profound word. When we read the word righteousness, we take that as imputing. That it says that we take that to mean that, Yahuwah only sees Yahusha. The blood covers us. No matter how wicked you are, he just sees Yahusha instead of you because you believe in him, you trust him. No. He's going to see you if you're in the flesh. He's going to see you for what you really are, your wickedness. The blood is atonement that covers you for your sins so you can put on the new man. When you put on Yahusha, it doesn't mean you can keep on sinning, but you're putting him on. No. The only thing that you find relatively close to talking about Yahuwah will only see Yahusha and not your wickedness is things that say you put on the renewed man, a renewed mind, a transformed thing, a new creation, a new creature, where the former things are passed away, the former lust, the ways of the flesh are dead, and you're living in the way of the renewed man, putting on the new man, who is Yahusha in you. Who is Yahusha? Because you're walking the way Yahusha walks. You're keeping Torah the way Yahusha kept Torah, in that right heart, and the love, and all of that, the fruit of the Ruach. Still keeping the Torah and the fruit of the Ruach, because we just covered that. All right. Because the mind of the flesh is an enemy in opposition towards Yahuwah. It does not subject itself to the Torah of Yahuwah. That's what it means to be an enemy of Yahuwah. If you do not subject yourself to the Torah of Yahuwah, neither indeed is it able. And those who are in the flesh are unable to please him. And the opposite is about the righteous. They are able to please him. They are in agreement with the Torah of Yahuwah. And they do subject themselves to the Torah of Yahuwah. But you are not in the flesh, but you are in the Ruach, if indeed the Ruach of Yahuwah Elohim dwells in you. And if anyone does not have the Ruach of HaMashiach, this one is not his. And if HaMashiach is in you, the body is truly dead on account of sin, but the Ruach is high on account of righteousness. What does that mean? By doing the right things, by doing the righteous works of the Torah. What he just said. For those who do subject themselves to the Torah and are able to do them, are in agreement with the Torah and are pleasing to Yahuwah, that's the righteousness, who do subject themselves to the Torah of Yahuwah. And if HaMashiach is in you, then the body is truly dead on account of sin, but the Ruach is high on account of righteousness, living the righteous ways of the Torah. Because Scripture says, if you do these, you shall live by them. If you keep the Torah, you shall not. You got to live by them. And if you break one, you're going to die. No, it's like if you're doing them, you're going to have eternal chai because you're doing them. Leads to chai. And if the Ruach of him who raised Yahusha from the dead dwells in you, he's in you. He who raised HaMashiach from the dead shall also give chai to your mortal bodies through his Ruach dwelling in you. What do you think that means? We think resurrection. He already covered that in Romans 6. He's not repeating. He does repeat himself, but that's not what he's talking about here. When he's saying that he who raised HaMashiach from the dead shall also give chai to your mortal bodies, he's saying that he's going to, Ezekiel 36:25, he's going to put his Ruach within you and take that stony heart that's in rebellion and opposition to the Torah and give you his heart of flesh in you, that you shall walk in his laws and guard his right ruling. That's eternal chai. He's going to give you eternal chai. He's going to put it in you to be able to walk in the ways of eternal chai, to keep the Torah. He who raised HaMashiach from the dead shall also give chai to your mortal bodies, give you that heart of flesh, the Ruach of Yahusha, to your mortal bodies through his Ruach dwelling in you. So then, brothers, we are not debtors to the flesh. We don't owe flesh nothing. We don't need to keep on sinning. We don't need to live for it, to live according to the flesh. For if you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. It doesn't get no clearer than that in chapter 8. For if you live according to the flesh, sin and death, the law of sin and death, you sin, you die, you are going to die. That's the law of sin and death, not the Torah. The law of sin and death is, if you sin, you die. But if by the Ruach you put to death the deeds of the body, you don't sin no more, in other words. 1 John. You put to death the deeds of the body, you shall live. Saying the same thing Deuteronomy talks about. If you do these commandments, you shall live and have chai. Real quick. Deuteronomy 30. One of my favorites. One of my favorite cupcakes. There's a sweet treat to my taste. This is like beans and cornbread and side of sweet treat. Alright. So Deuteronomy 30. Literally my mouth's watering for Deuteronomy 30. Because the word is delicious. The word is truly delicious. Alright. Deuteronomy 30. Whew, man, it tastes so good already. It says, if you obey the voice of Yahuwah your Elohim to guard his commands and his laws which are written in this book of the Torah, if you turn back to Yahuwah your Elohim with all your heart and with all your being, for this command which I am commanding you today is not too hard for you, nor is it too far off. So he's telling us the Torah is not even too hard, nor is it far off. It is not in the Shamayim to say, who shall ascend into the Shamayim for us and bring it to us and cause us to hear it, so that we do it. Nor is it beyond the sea to say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it to us and cause us to hear it, so that we do it. For the word is very near you. And Shaul quotes this, saying that Yahusha is not too high, Yahusha is not in Shaul, Yahusha is not far off. But here it's saying the Torah. Why is that? Because Yahusha is the Torah made flesh. So Yahusha is not too far, neither is the Torah, because they're one. So and Shaul understand it. Nor is it beyond the sea to say, who shall go over the sea for us and bring it to us, bring the Torah to us, bring Yahusha to us, and cause us to hear it, cause us to do it, so that we do it. For the word is very near you, and in your mouth, and in your heart, to do it. See, I have put before you today high and good, and death and evil, which Shaul is talking about in Romans 8, and that I am commanding you today. What do Christians say? Oh, the law is done away with. All we have to do is love Yahuwah with all our mind, being, and strength, and our neighbor as ourselves. What does that actually mean? See, I have put before you today high and good, and death and evil, and that I am commanding you today to love Yahuwah your Elohim, to walk in his ways, and to guard his commandments, and his laws, and his right rulings. And you shall live and increase, and Yahuwah your Elohim shall barak you in the land which you go to possess, which is the new Yerushalayim, the eternal Chai. But here it says, what does it mean to love Yahuwah? And that I'm commanding you today to love Yahuwah your Elohim, which is to walk in his ways and to guard his commands and his laws and his right rulings, and you shall live and increase. So how did this commandments of guarding and loving Yahuwah and guarding him that shall lead to eternal Chai, you shall live and increase, also it now leads to death, leads to, a curse? Doesn't make any sense. Because here the writer Musha was talking about mixed with belief, trusting in Yahuwah Yahusha. That's what it means to love. When you love him, you're going to have a trust with him. It'll lead to Chai. But because no one didn't trust, they're doing it by the letter because they were told to. Oh man, do I have to? Traditions, it leads to death because they weren't able to please Yahuwah because they didn't really love him. When you love him, you can do it and you'll be pleasing. And it leads to Chai. And this is what Shaul is paraphrasing from in Romans 8. He says, for if you live according to the flesh, you are going to die. But if by the Ruach you put to death the deeds of the body, you shall live. Saying the same thing in Deuteronomy 30. For as many are as led by the Ruach of Elohim, these are Banim of Elohim. These are children of Yahuwah. For you did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear. Why is it saying that? For you did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear. Because the first covenant is the law of sin and death. I know I'm a sinner. I'm going to die. I'm scared. I'm afraid of the judgment. I got away with something that deserves death. And if, I take it to my grave, but I know at the judgment I'm going to probably get judged by it anyways. Who is going to find me out and expose on the day of judgment? I'm going to die. I'm scared. I'm doing this by the letter. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know anything. For you did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear because of, some sins you've committed and you're afraid of condemnation. But you receive the Ruach of adoption as Banim, children, by whom we cry out, Abba, Father, which you spoke earlier, because he came to manifest himself through Yahusha to die for us. That's how much he loves us. If we can grasp that we're forgiven. That he loves us that much that he impelled his own child to show us how much he loves us. That's like, it makes you think, man, you love us more than your own child? But that's how much he loves us. That he died even for us in the manifestation through Yahusha. To know that you don't have to be in fear of condemnation, because I love you so much to give up everything for you so that you can have everything in me. So now we don't live with the fear of a condemnation when we look at the Torah, but now we're focused on the fact that Yahusha came and died for us by sending his own bond, his own heir of all creation, who he breathed everything through to die for us, that we can cry to him, Abba, Father, and be reconciled through that loving relationship, the intimacy, knowing we're forgiven. Now we're children of Yahuwah. We're children of the Most High. We're not debtors to flesh with this taskmasters, you need to be righteous or I'm going to kill you. But it's not. That's my Father. I'm forgiven. He paid the ultimate price. Gave everything. That blood of Yahusha is worth more than the sins. If everything sinned, the universe, if the sun and the moon sin every day 1,000,000 times over, he's the creator. His blood is worth more than that. It could cover all that. So should we continue sinning to let compassion increase? Let it not be. But because we were put to death also with Yahusha through immersion, let us also walk in newness of Chai after him. Torah will fall after that. Keeping our eyes on him. Loving the one who paid the death penalty. And so we keep Torah as the evidence of our salvation to show that we walk in righteousness. That the righteous requirements of the law might be completed in us, might be walked out through us, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Ruach of Yahusha, his breath. If you want to get a better understanding of the Ruach, we'll walk according to the breath of Yahusha. Like he's breathing through us, so we walk the way he walked. We keep it. For you did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear of the condemnation, but you received the Ruach of adoption as children, by whom we cry out, Abba, Father. The Ruach himself bears witness with our nefesh, our spirit, our nefesh, that we are children of Elohim. And if children, also heirs, just the way Yahusha is an heir. Truly heirs of Elohim and co-heirs with Hamashiach, if indeed we suffer with him, in order that we also be exalted together. Suffer with him in walking in his righteousness, putting to death the sins of the flesh, the ways of the flesh. It'll put you to death. It feels like death to you, because it's contrary to that flesh nature. For I reckon that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the esteem that is to be revealed in us. For the intense longing of the creation eagerly waits for the revealing of the Banim of Elohim, the children of Elohim. For the creation was subjected to futility, not from choice, but because of him who subjected it in anticipation. In other words, saying creation also is bearing witness, as you see all creation, die and wither and regrow, trees, plants, all that. Not because, anything they did wrong, but because Yahuwah did it to manifest, a renewed Shamayim and an earth, a renewed kingdom to come on our behalf concerning us. He subjected it in anticipation that the creation itself also shall be delivered from the bondage to corruption into the esteemed freedom of the children of Elohim. Delivered from the bondage of corruption. In other words, all creation is going to be delivered as well from the bondage of corruption into the esteemed freedom of the children of Elohim. When we're esteemed into a new creation, so are they. Do you have dogs? Do you have pets, animals, things that have died, goldfish, and you've wondered about where they go, what's going to happen with them? Shaul is telling us plainly right here that all of that's going to be given newness of life. It's going to be resurrected as well, or be transformed, recycled into a newer esteem. But it's going to have its ruach, and it's going to have that presence of, the dog might be a different in a different form, different creation at that point, but you're going to recognize that this is from that breath, this is that same nafash that I knew and loved on earth. For the creation was subjected to futility, not from choice, but from him who subjected in anticipation that the creation itself also shall be delivered from the bondage to corruption into the esteemed freedom of the children of Elohim. So the creation also be delivered from the bondage of corruption, and they'll be brought into the esteem of the freedom of the children of Elohim. For we know that all the creation groans together and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. And not only so, but even we ourselves, who are the first fruits of the Ruach, there's your first fruits of the Ruach, the first fruits, the first to ripen the strength of it. We ourselves also grown within ourselves. You know, for those who say like, oh man, you're a believer, you're born again, you should be happy, you should be, loving life, or and I don't mean it that way, but we love life, we love Chai because Yahusha, praise God. But in this context, I'll say hi to Crazy. Speaking of the creation, right? She came when I was bringing that word about all the creation groans and expectantly, has an expectation, anticipates the new creation. All right, I'm gonna be done. She wants a little bit of attention. We're dog sitting right now. But that's Brazy after her. She's amazing. She's a wonderful animal, and the animals even know. I was just reading about the creation. It's like she knew that the creation shall be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the esteemed freedom of the children of Elohim. For we know, preach to all creation. For we know that all the creation groans together and suffers the pains of childbirth together until now. And not only so, but even we ourselves, who have the first fruit of the Ruach, we ourselves also groan within ourselves. So we also groan. I don't have to lie. I don't have to try to deceive y'all. You can hear me when I talk. I'm groaning. I have a groan in my voice. I just can't do nothing about it. I'm worn out. I'm tired. I'm ready to go. I preached the word. I've done the best I could with the energy Yahuwah gave me to preach the word and fight the good fight, and I'm groaning. I'm worn out. So, and not only so, but even ourselves, we ourselves who are the first fruit of the Ruach, we ourselves also groan within ourselves, eagerly waiting for the adoption as Banim, the children of the redemption of our body. Waiting for the adoption as Banim, the redemption of our body. For in this expectation we were saved. But expectation that is seen is not expectation. For when anyone sees it, does he expect it? So we're still expecting a resurrection. We have an expectation for that. And if we expect what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with endurance, with suffering. We suffer through it. We suffer patiently, right? So like your parents say, if you want to go to Disneyland next month, you got to be good. So like for the whole month you're being good, you're suffering through being good and not lashing out at your parents, not whining about anything because you want to go to Disneyland. That's what he's talking about. And if we expect what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with endurance, with suffering. And in the same way, the Ruach helps in our weaknesses. See how that's in context with suffering? Because, they have these words, endurance, and we think like endurance, like endurance, like you can go, you can just keep moving, keep going. Yeah, it has that sense, but it's also enduring, like to endure something, endure pain, suffering. And if we expect what we do not see, we eagerly wait for it with suffering. I say suffering, and look how it's in context, endurance, with suffering. And in the same way, the Ruach helps us in our weaknesses, right, because of our sufferings. For we know not what we should pray, but the Ruach himself pleads our case for us with groanings unutterable. You're at a moment you're praying, you just cry out to Yahuwah. And he who searches the hearts knows what the mind of the Ruach is, because he makes intercession for the Kudashim according to Elohim. And we know that all works together for good to those who love Elohim. And we know that all works together for good to those who love Elohim. You love them? Trust that everything's working for your good. Even if you mess up, 7 times the righteous man falls and gets back up, and the wicked perish. You know what I'm saying? So we're going to make mistakes, but you know that you love him. Trust him. He's got you. And in the same way, the Ruach helps in our weaknesses, for we do not know. Okay, and he who searches the hearts knows the mind of the Ruach. what the mind of the Ruach is, because he makes intercession for the Kodashim according to Elohim. And we know that all works together for good to those who love Yahuwah, Elohim, to those who are called according to purpose, because those whom he knew beforehand, he also ordained beforehand to be conformed to the likeness of his bond. I want you to get that, get deep in that. Because those who he knew beforehand, he knew us beforehand, before we're in the womb, right? He also ordained beforehand to be conformed in the likeness of his bond. So even beforehand, in a sense, we were already conformed to the likeness of Yahusha. We had something about our nature that was Yahusha-like. You know, whether you were meek, you were gentle, some of the fruit of the Ruach, you just always had intimate relationship. There's something about you that you knew you were already separated beforehand since the beginning. He also ordained beforehand to be conformed to the likeness of his bond. And the rest he worked out throughout our lives to be conformed to his likeness as we grew older. That he became the firstborn among many brothers. And whom he ordained beforehand, these he also called. And whom he called, these he also declared right. And whom he declared right, these he also esteemed. A lot of us grew up in churches and we knew these things in our heart our whole lives, but the world told us we got to be cool to fit in. We got to talk down people to fit in. We got to be selfish to fit in. We got to, make fun of people, like if we're like making jokes at the expense of people, then we're fitting in. But then eventually, we look at the scriptures and we see this is who I really feel like I am. I feel like this is my reflection. And at a time in the later day in our lives, we realize, I don't care what the world's doing. I'm going to live like this. And so that was prepared beforehand. They should walk in that. What then shall we say? What then shall we say to this? If Elohim is for us, who is against us? Truly, he who did not spare his own bond. I love how I said this, because in a lot of translations it reads as a statement. If Elohim is for us, who is against us? But it's asking a question. It says, what then shall we say to this? Right? And he's asking a question again. If Elohim is for us, who is against us? In other words, if Yahuwah is for us, what can come against us? Like we can do whatever we want. We're okay. We can run the world. We can have authority over anything. But look what Yahusha did. Yahusha died. Yahusha died for our sins. He was put to death. So what then shall we say to this? If Elohim is for us, who is against us? Yahuwah was for Yahusha and allowed him to be put to death. Truly, he who did not spare his own bond, but delivered him up on behalf of us all, how shall he not, along with him, freely give us all else? Who shall bring any charge against Elohim's chosen Kodashim? It is Elohim who is declaring right. Who is he who is condemning? It is Hamashiach who died. And furthermore, it is also raised up. Who is also at the right hand of Yahuwah? Who also makes intercession for us? Who shall separate us from the love of Hamashiach? Shall pressure, or distress, or persecution, or scarcity of food, or nakedness, or danger, or sword? We're too legit to quit. Nothing can separate us from the love of Yahusha. He asked the question, what then shall we say? If Elohim is for us, who shall be against us? Well, the world was against Yahusha. Everything might be against us. But if he gave Yahusha everything, so he also gave us everything as well in eternal high. So we should allow these things to come against us. Who is he who is condemning? It is Hamashiach who died. In other words, the world condemned Hamashiach to death. Do you get that wisdom? And I was going to go over it, but the Ruach's like, go back to that and read it. I'm going to give you the revelation. That's what it is. He said, who shall bring any charge against Elohim's chosen Kodashim? He's telling us who's going to be against us, right? Let's break that down. What then shall we say to this? If Elohim is for us, who is against us? The world. Truly he who did not spare his own bond, but delivered him up on behalf of us all, how shall he not along with him freely give us all else? In other words, the world's going to be against us. We're going to be put to death like Yahusha, but he'll give us everything in that, because Yahusha was everything for him. So that's how much we're worth to him. So he's asking the questions. Who shall bring any charges against Elohim's Kodashim? The world. It is Elohim who is declaring right, though. In the end, Yahuwah is going to declare right. Who is he who is condemning? The world. Right? They condemned Yahusha to death. It is Hamashiach who died, right? The world put him to death. and furthermore is also raised up. Let them put you to death. Yahuwah is going to raise you back up, who is also at the right hand of Yahuwah, who also makes intercession for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Hamashiach? The world will try. Shall pressure, right? They shall put pressure on you. Shall pressure or distress or persecution or scarcity of food or nakedness or danger or sword? They're going to try to put sword, nakedness, danger, everything on you to try to separate you from the love of Yahuwah. They want to make you crazy because they understand that love, that meekness, that peace you have is the expression of the love of Yahuwah that you have for him and that he has for you. And they want to separate it. The world gets jealous, and they're jealous of the love that you have for Yahuwah because they know it's a reflection of the love he has for you and that you've received his love. As it has been written, for your sake we are killed all day long. As it has been written, for your sake we are killed all day long. We're killed all day long by the world. We are reckoned as sheep of slaughter. But in all this we are more than overcomers through him who loved us. So we love him back, and they can't separate us from the love of each other. For I am persuaded that neither death nor high, neither in Sheol I'll still be in his love. I'll love him, he'll love me. For I am persuaded that neither death nor high nor malakim, fallen messengers trying to deceive us, any kind of thing, nor principalities, nor higher powers, nor authorities, nor powers, neither the present nor the future, nor height nor depth, nor any other creature, nor anything from any cosmic realm, nothing that comes through any kind of portal, not anything from any kind of alternate universe reality, because I've been through all that and seen it myself. No height nor depth, nor any counterfeit alternate universe reality, no cosmic realms and dimensions and quantum realms and all these kind of things shall be able to separate us from the love of Yahuwah, which is in Mashiach Yahusha Aradon. Hallelujah, Yahusha. That is the word today. Pray that you are Baruch. We will catch up on chapter 9 of the time. We actually have to get going to Airbnb this place out, clean up a little bit. That I bid you farewell. Having most Baruch Shabbat and a prep day and a Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom. Yasharah Mashpakah. To the Gentiles, the foreigners and the strangers being grafted in, being joined to us. We're no different than you. A lot of you are better than us in many ways. Carry the right heart, the right nature, the love of people. Only we reconcile. We just ask you to honor Yahuwah the way you would like to, and keeping the Torah in that same nature, because you know his love for you and your love for him. This is a way that honors him too. It's another offering, a fragrant offering to him that will be pleasing to him. So with that, I bid you farewell, Yasharal. Shalom, shalom. Bid you farewell. May Abba Yahuwah favor you and increase you. May he guard you and protect you. Make his face shine upon you, be compassionate towards you. Lift his countenance toward you, and favor you with all the fruit of the Ruach. I pray this and allow this by the power of the blood of the renewed covenant, by the power of the resurrection, and the Ruach HaKodesh and Yahushua Mashiach, and by the power of the name of Yahushua Mashiach, our Adon, our Elohim, our King of Kings, and our Prince of Peace, and our Kuhan HaGadol, forever and ever. Aman and Aman and Aman. Shalom, shalom, Yasharal. Shalom, shalom, Mashpakah. Shabbat shalom. Love you.